going back in.
There's still men out there. God damn. When I go home, people ask me, "Hey, Hoot, why do you do it, man? Why? Just some kind of war junkie?" I won't say a goddamn word. Why? They won't understand. They won't understand why we do it. They won't understand it's about the men next to you. And that's it. That's all it is.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Good knowing exactly where to go with the football.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome into Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you by Military Broadcast Radio, helping give veterans a voice and helping give them a platform to let their stories be heard. If you'd like to learn more, please scan that little QR code right underneath my face here next to Inside the Hoosier Mind name, and it'll give you more information about MBR and what they do, what their mission is. And if you would like to possibly or potentially donate, you can do so through that QR code. Well, it is July 17th. We are officially halfway through summer with almost the end of the month coming up, and then we'll have August. And with that as well, we have the very tail end of the offseason for football, both college and professional football as well. And there's a little bit of news that we're going to be not really breaking, but we're going to be covering a little bit more in depth. I covered it a little bit last week when it first broke after the Big 12 Media Day, but I brought in a very good friend who you have actually seen on the show before if you're a repeat guest. If not, the gentleman I'm about to bring on, a gentleman by the name of Sam Sprunger, is actually a co-host with me on the show Big Talk. That's B1G Talk. And he is one of my very good friends who he and I both know college football, I would argue, pretty decently well. And he and I both have pretty good interests as far as the Big Ten goes. And he and I are going to discuss Clemson and Florida State continuing to rock the boat with the ACC, but not in the most positive way that they would hope for, because now coming out that both the SEC and the Big Ten supposedly would not be interested in bringing them in as it currently stands right now. And their new home may be in the very aggressive Big 12 through Brett Yormark. But Sam and I will discuss that, and let me just bring him on.
Interview of the week sponsored by LTD Tactical.
Sam, welcome in, buddy. How are you, good sir?
It is a wonderful day when you can talk about sports. It is awesome.
It is. And, you know, I kind of hate this time of year, but I love this time of year at the same time. And the reason why I say that, I love it because we're now kind of getting to the very tail end stretch of the off season. People are getting antsy. Now, they've kind of been pacified a little bit because of the new NCAA 25 game having been pre-released on the 15th. And if you're an avid gamer or an avid college football fan like I am, and you're also a millennial, you've been playing that on your Xbox ever since Monday. And I even left work early to be able to play it because I've been waiting 11 years for that game to come out. For everybody else who doesn't have a stupid amount of money to spend, or you're just more mature than I am, you have to unfortunately wait until Friday to be able to play it when it's officially released to everybody. But obviously, Sam, this time is when we get all the crazy rumors, all the behind scenes stuff happens, because you know what I think honestly happens? I think even the presidents and the athletic directors for some of these programs, I think even they get antsy. They're like, man, we're really bored.
Mhm.
What can we do to kind of stir the pot to get everybody kind of talking about us? And so that we can be like, we're just going to be so revved up for the season. And I sent this to you last week, kind of showing you, and I think you probably, read about it and saw it. And I don't know about you. There's only two names I really trust when it comes to breaking college football news. That's Pete Thamel or Brett McMurphy.
Yep.
And both of them came out with this, talking about the Big 12 media days and how Brett Yormark is going to continue to be aggressive in expansion. And obviously, the two biggest names that are going to be the big fish that are out there, other than Notre Dame, is Clemson and Florida State. So, what was your kind of initial thoughts when you heard that? I mean, this is something that we knew they were both trying to leave the ACC, but the fact that the Big 12 could potentially be in play for them. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, and this piggybacks actually the news that came out just yesterday that kind of the Big Ten and the SEC don't really see themselves going after at least Florida State.
Right.
Lends to the aspect of the Big 12's number 3 and they know it, so they've got to make some sort of a big splash. And whether you agree with it or not, I think the way it sits, and you take everything into consideration, the Big Ten's number 1.
Yeah.
Because of the media deal, the amount of teams that they have. Do they win a lot of national titles? No, but they always constantly have teams in the playoff, teams performing in the top 5 to top 3, if not higher in the polls, and again, and I would argue from top to bottom, in the years that the SEC put 2 teams into the playoff, the Big Ten still was top to bottom a better conference. But then you put the SEC second easily; those are 1 and 2. The Big 12's got to make a splash somewhere, because I think you're kind of in the same boat as I am. If Notre Dame does indeed join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten.
Yeah.
It makes the most sense. They're aligning their schedule to kind of almost fit that. And I just think that if they're going to finally break down and join a conference, which I totally have said from the beginning of all this, they're going to, it will be the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So I think this makes sense for the Big 12 to, especially like I said, after the information that came out yesterday, that the Big 10 and the SEC don't see Florida State as a viable team to join their conference. I think it makes sense that the Big 12 is going to go after them because they need some sort of a splash.
Yeah. And real quick too, I know it's off the Big 10 topic, but when I look at the Big 12, I only see really one clear-cut favorite to even run away with the conference, because to me, everybody else that's in there, they're basically the same. They're at about the same level. When I look at the Big 12, the only team that stands head and shoulders above everybody else is Utah. Like I look at Colorado. I don't really see I know a lot of people, at least fan favorite wise, looking at Deion Sanders, what he's been able to do with the transfer portal. I don't really see Colorado being able to take that next step to potentially, winning the conference. Now, I do think Kansas State might be the other probably big name that you could put in there as far as a heavy favorite with Utah to win the Big 12. I know Kansas has done really well the last couple of seasons. I don't know if they're ready to take that next step. Baylor is hot and cold. TCU is still kind of coming off that Sonny Dykes and that, Cinderella story of the national title. They took a step back last year. I don't really see either Arizona school making a huge difference. And then I don't see any of the other 4 new additions from 2023 with, Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU making a splash. Maybe West Virginia kind of steps above some of them, not much. And then I don't see Texas Tech either. So, I mean, to me, and Actually, there is a third name that you could see because just consistently they have been a great program over the last few years in Oklahoma State as well. So maybe those three between Utah, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. But other than that, I feel like everybody else is on the same playing field of the Big 12.
I really honestly think you might be overlooking Colorado a little too much. I'm not saying that they're a clear cut, but I
Right.
think if you're going to divide them into front runners to everybody else is the same, Colorado's in that top. I think it's a top 4 rather than just a top 3. That's not to say that they're not number 4 out of that top group, but I think they are residing in that top group.
Okay. But nonetheless, though, so if the Big 12 was to, I mean, obviously the Big 12 and Brett Yormark mentioned they're aggressively looking at expanding. They have, other than basically Oregon State and Washington State, they haven't told anybody no. They're like, hey, if
Right.
you want to join, you're almost more than welcome to. We'll do some evaluations.
Make
and
your
take some of this
pitch.
stuff in consideration, but we're more likely not going to tell you no. And so for them, if they could land someone like Clemson or more than likely Florida State, and I do agree, I think that out of the two with Florida State, the Big Ten might be more considerate of taking them just because then the Big Ten would have a foothold or at least a spot in almost every single geographical part of the United States.
Remember,
With the
the
exception
U
of
resides
Texas.
in Florida too, though.
They do. They do. Now, there was another report added to that not only would Clemson and Florida State be looking to join the Big 12 if the SEC and Big 10 deny them, but there are 4 other schools who would potentially be interested as well. And we would only have to assume none of the school names that are actually reported or put out there. We'd have to assume UNC. We'd have to assume Miami. A name that was actually mentioned for the SEC that would potentially go after the University of Virginia, just so that way they could finally have a foothold, in the Commonwealth of Virginia state. And honestly, you could probably take a random pick as far as who 4 would be. I don't necessarily see Duke, only because Duke would have to be
Georgia
primarily
Tech.
carried by basketball. Georgia Tech, maybe, because Georgia Tech was originally in the SEC along with Tulane, so maybe they're trying to go back home. Maybe. But nonetheless, though, I mean, if it came down to it, because when you look at how Florida State is handling the situation, they're handling it very poorly as far as
they're children. They're acting like children.
The fact that this is a world ran organization. They make millions and millions of dollars. They're one of the biggest brands and most well-known brands in college football. I get why they're upset with the ACC. They're making rumblings. They're like, we want out of here. Look, you guys either need to renegotiate this deal with ESPN as far as our media rights goes, or we need to try to find somewhere else. Now, again, kind of playing devil's advocate, a little bit of a hypothetical. Say they do have a representative or a rep that is the person they talk to for ESPN, or the person that, hey, you go to the table for ESPN or you go to the table for the ACC and you try to get us a new deal. And maybe the ACC is not listening. Like, no, you guys are locked in. Like, we're not worried about what you're doing. Stop it. Now Florida State is looking at it as, okay, well, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. We want more money. The fact that we're making half the money of, say, a Vanderbilt or an IU or a Northwestern who's getting the crap kicked out of them, 8 times a year by triple digits almost. And we're supposed to be competing for a national title. We want to get paid more. So say they do get out of the ACC and the opportunity comes and the Big Ten could say, okay, we want to expand into Florida. Would you want them in the Big Ten? Because again, now you have access to a lot of those Southern recruits. It's not as bad, I would say, now as it used to be with more of the geographical locks and whatnot. I mean, basically now you can still go to the national level. You can still go pro. You've got social media. So I think it's a lot more open, and you don't have to necessarily worry about the quote unquote pipeline states anymore. It's like, oh yeah, we've got this in our backyard type deal. Because those schools are going to go after them regardless, no matter what conference that you're in. But would you want the Big Ten to get Florida State if the option was available?
Short answer, yes.
Okay.
Long answer. It's real easy to talk a big game when they're not available, but when they become available, then it's, oh, wait, let's rethink this. Now, the one thing is academically, they need to be certified AAU.
Correct.
And if they're not, then the Big Ten has it set. That's how we could tell it was going to be Washington, USC, UCLA, and Oregon from the Big 12 or from the Pac-12. That's how we knew those would be the four that were coming to the Big Ten, because they were AAU certified, and that's what the Big Ten requires from its schools. Now, I don't know how easy it is to get AAU certified. And I don't know if the Big Ten's willing to change that requirement. But short answer, yeah. The pedigree of Florida State and what they've done in the past, what they grew from and what they turned into in the 90s, and then it came back in the early 2000s, and then came back, like they've consistently been that way for almost 40 years. And that tells me, that's a program you would like to have in your conference. So I think it would be a good add, as long as you go, hey, if you're coming into the conference, you need to shut your mouth.
Right.
Because look, we make a lot of money, and we've got it built into as we expand, the media deal expands. But if you're going to keep running your mouth, we don't want you, because the headaches might be worse than what the benefit. It's a cost benefit analysis, essentially. And if they can get some sort of a guarantee that they'll at least tone it down, then I think it would be a good ad. And I think, honestly, wherever Florida State goes, that's where Clemson's going to follow.
Okay. I could kind of see it as far as that goes, but I do wonder too, though, and again, this is just purely speculation for the Big Ten, because I like the fact that they've make all of their schools AAU accredited, because I feel like that makes it easier for the student athletes, for everybody involved, because, okay, technically I could go to any one of these other schools inside the Big Ten, and my credits and everything like that is going to be equally recognized.
As long as they match a course offered at the other institution, it will count. Yeah.
Which is nice. And that's fantastic. And it actually probably helps save people a lot of money when they do that. For the Big Ten, though, do you think there should come a point, because now with this basically power struggle of trying to grab the biggest brands, who's the big fish you can grab next to make yourself, the Power One conference and whatnot, or Power Two, whichever one you're in, do you think there needs to come a point where, say, Florida State is available, and they say, okay, look, we're going to invite you into the conference, but this is with the notion that, A, you're going to behave yourself because you are going to get a share of this media deal. It's going to be significantly more than what you're making now, by, I would say, minimum, because I think right now they're only making about $40 million a year.
They're going to make at least twice that.
Yeah. So, I mean, even if they were to only come in and get a portion of it, they're still going to probably get, 10 to 30 million more than what they're earning right now, which is big. I would also put that under the notion, and again, I don't know, I tried to look it up just now, and of course it's not an easy answer because we're not a massive institution, so we don't really get to ask those type of questions. Of, say they give them, look, you've got 3 years from the time that you're admitted into the Big Ten to be AAU accredited in order for you to stay in the conference, otherwise you're going to get the boot.
So in other words, it's like an emergency teaching license. Like I'm a teacher by day, so there's been times that I've accepted a job under the premise of I needed to go towards it would be an emergency license. I could have it for 3 years as long as I was making progress towards that actual certification. So that's what you're kind of saying is what do I say? Honestly, Tony, let's throw it what it is, because why are we talking about these conferences expanding so largely?
Money.
Yeah, it's
money and entertainment.
It's money and entertainment. It has nothing to do with education. At some point, the Big Ten's going to have to either A, just stand by their guns and say, look, we're going to at least keep that premise of being an academic conference as well, or at least have some academic standards, or we're going to throw that by the wayside and we're just going to take whoever we can get.
Yeah.
They've got to decide that. Now, I'm not opposed. I kind of like that emergency, like that you've got 3 years or 4 years or however long it normally takes to change your certification and become accredited through AAU. Let's say it's a 5-year. Okay, well, you have 5 years.
Yeah.
From the time we say you're accepted.
Yeah, you're a member.
Until you get it, you have 5 years. That means no hiccups. You've got to take this seriously. You've got to go and do what you need to do to get this accreditation, or they just go, you know what? We don't need it now.
Yeah.
One of the two things that needs to happen. But I honestly, I think as long as they meet the criteria of what the Big Ten would give them, I would welcome Florida State in, because it gives you, like you said, that footprint into Florida.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I know you mentioned Miami as being a potential spot, and I would think if we look at the big brands that are in the ACC right now, Miami is probably one of those schools, and they know it as well, that, hey, we will get an invitation to a major conference. We're not necessarily worried about that. It's people like Boston College that's going to have to be a little bit worried as far as if they're going to have a home or not. I think NC State would probably go into the Big 12 pretty easily. They may try to go in the SEC. I doubt it, because honestly, they only need NC State might go to the SEC if they're not able to get North Carolina. They might go in there, but
right. And I don't know this, but I would sure think that North Carolina is going to go where Duke goes.
Maybe. It was interesting when I first read that report as far as who the conferences were kind of after. The Big Tens was the only one that the Big Ten really mentioned was UNC, and the SEC mentioned that they wanted UNC and they wanted Virginia. So Duke kind of wasn't really there. I think, unfortunately, even though basketball wise, it would still generate a good amount of revenue, because college basketball is the second leading highest revenue for college sports in that regard. I don't know if it would be enough pull to kind of go with it.
That would be the only rivalry that I could see basketball driving that bus for it. That's the only one. Like, you've got, excuse me, Michigan State, and granted, Michigan State ain't leaving the Big Ten, but that's a big rivalry. I don't see that point. IU Purdue, I don't see that being, because you still have football driving the bus, and I understand why UNC would be the draw over Duke because of that, because UNC has been good in football. Duke's had some good seasons, but like North Carolina has put together a program that is consistently bowling where Duke isn't. Yeah. But I would think that UNC Duke would be the one basketball rivalry that could actually hold together strong enough that, well, where they go, we go.
Yeah. And I will say too, one thing that I could see, just because I think the Big 12 would add it, just to kind of strengthen what the Big 12 would do at, continue to strengthen how good of a basketball conference they are. Because I mean, you think about it, they have Arizona, they have Houston, not great football schools, but fantastic basketball schools. They've still got Baylor, Kansas. So I mean, potentially a really dangerous basketball conference nonetheless.
Big Ten still needs to get their foot into Texas, though.
They do. I know you mentioned, I think Baylor. I would kind of like to see TCU, but that would come with a stipulation. You got to bring the damn spikes back on the neck on your uniforms. No, that's plain crap.
Yeah.
Spikes got to come back for the Hypnotoad. But when Sam and I come back, we'll discuss Sam's picks for out of the Big Ten, the 3 teams that he thinks is going to potentially make the playoffs. Some of them might be a little bit of a surprise. I know I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but we'll see if Sam differs from me a little bit or not when we come back.
The fact that our patriotism in America is dwindling, I really wanted to start the American AF movement. Freedom is fragile, very fragile. It takes a certain level of intestinal fortitude to stand up and say and do the right thing to preserve the freedoms that so many have paid a large price for. About being in the military, and that recruiter said, it's not Biden's army, it's your army, it's his army, it's his army, it's all of our army.
American tactical. American as f***.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Inside the Hoosier Mind, brought to you in part by Military Broadcast Radio, giving a voice to veterans and helping them get their voice to be heard. If you'd like to learn more, look at that little QR code right underneath Sam's picture there. That can help give you a little bit more info as far as MBR, what their mission is, what they do, or you can go to mbr.org, and that will give you more information as well. Sam and I are back, and we are going to talk about some of the Big Ten teams, now that the playoffs have expanded to 12, and we don't have to worry about the two top SEC teams getting into the playoffs again. We can actually have more than just two SEC teams go in.
The SEC got what they wanted. They'd have 5 or 6 of the 12.
Yeah, they would. It would just constantly be the SEC championship is the national title for them. But when I talked about this last week, I had 3 teams that I felt, after I looked at their schedule, were in the best possible position to maybe not necessarily win the Big Ten, but have a chance to be able to go into the playoffs, maybe win a road playoff game because of how the new format is set up. And my 3 teams were Nebraska, Penn State, and Iowa. Now, I sent this message to Sam just a few minutes before the show started, so I kind of put him in a little bit of a little quick on your feet test as far as this goes. So I know Sam's going to rise to the challenge with no problem, but it was kind of like, oh, I maybe should have asked him this yesterday so he can have more than like 30 seconds to do a little bit of research on this.
I've already been thinking about this, Tony.
I mean, you're right. You're right. Again, like we kind of mentioned earlier, we can see the light as far as football coming back. We have college football starting again next month, but we still have to get through the remaining 14 days that is July before that happens. And even then, we still got to get through basically like the whole flipping month of August before college football comes back. True. So we got nothing but to talk about but rumors, predictions, and schedules. And again, we have NCAA 25 to kind of pacify us in the meantime, to create our dynasties, to make UConn a national title contender again, or Central Michigan versus UMass, so it can be CUMASS, as Sam so delightfully pointed out to me one day, as far as rivalries go. But Sam, who is your first team that you would say is going to be your you think is going to be a for sure lock? And what we'll do is we will pull up the schedule on here, and then Sam and I will actually break down each game as far as who we think is probably going to walk away the winner in that game.
My first one, and I've been on this wagon since last year, and they kind of underperformed in their big games and ended up falling short. But Penn State is my first one. I really do have the Lions being one that would, and I've looked at this schedule. I'm not going to say easy schedule. No. I don't want to go that far, but it's a very favorable schedule.
They get a little bit of a favor because of the Big Ten expanding. They don't have to face both Ohio State and Michigan, which has honestly been the two hardest teams that they've had to contend with, honestly, over the last 10 years. I mean, Penn State has been pretty consistently a top 15 program at minimum most of the time. And usually they come out of it with 2 losses, 9 times out of 10 there to Ohio State and to Michigan.
Well, and ever since the rebuild from when that program was completely dismantled and rebuilt, it's been Michigan and Ohio State that have really been the fly in their ointment.
Yeah. So let's look at their first game though. So we have a repeat of I remember right, this is the backyard brawl, is it not? Or is that Pitt
Yes.
versus them?
No, it's oh no, that is Pitt in West Virginia, isn't it? The
I think so.
backyard brawl. This is a rivalry, though. Penn State
Yes,
and
it
West
is.
Virginia is a rivalry that they used to play when Penn State was an independent back in the early 90s or 80s and 90s. This was a rivalry that was played pretty much every year.
Yeah.
But honestly, I haven't seen anything from West Virginia that makes me think they're going to even sniff threatening Penn State in this game. I don't have any confidence that the Mountaineers have rebuilt and improved to the point where they're going to even push Penn State.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it, to be 100% honest with you. Now, I know they faced each other last year,
Correct.
and Penn State whooped them pretty wholeheartedly.
Yep.
Here's the other crazy part. You want to take a guess at when the last time West Virginia won this rivalry was?
1986.
Very close. 1988. Before that, it was 1984. And prior to that, it was 1955.
So it's been hammer and nail, is what it's been.
Penn State leads the series 49-9-2. They're currently on a 5-game winning streak dating back to 1989. Like you said, they played this at least once a year, every year, up until Penn State joined the Big Ten. So their last game,
91.
their last game up until last season was October 24th, 1992. Penn State won 40-26.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing in any way. I don't think West Virginia gets the double-digit win in this rivalry.
Yeah, unfortunately not. And it's sad because I do kind of like West Virginia.
Yep.
You know, they've been one of those, I watched them a lot. I remember when they were, I remember like 17 years ago when they were like one of the top 5 teams in the country for a long time, with Geno Smith, Tavon Austin, all of them at, on the Mountaineers. And it's like, man, how the mighty have fallen, unfortunately, for country roads. So I think we agree, though, definitely going to get a win at West Virginia.
Yep.
Then they get 2 bye weeks basically back to back because they face Bowling Green out of
How
the
about
net.
3?
No, yeah, 3. Man, how do you get 3 bye weeks in a row?
Right in a row. No, I think they're Bowling Green, then their bye week, then Kent State. That's a 2-0 run in that 3-week stretch. I don't think either of those 2 MAC teams are going to be outstanding. Do I think they're going to be the dregs of the MAC? No, but Penn State's really, really good.
Yes.
And I think they're going to thump the Falcons and the Flashes both in back-to-back games.
Yeah. Then of course they have Illinois. I think we both agree Illinois took a step back last year after they lost a lot of the talent on that team. They're probably going to take another step back this year if I had to take a bet, or stay on about the same course that they were.
Even if they stay the same, they're still not at the par or up to par with Penn State. I honestly, looking at this schedule, I find it hard to see a second loss guaranteed. Like, I'm really confident that they're going to lose, honestly.
Yeah. Then of course they host UCLA with new UCLA head coach Deshaun Foster. I know a lot of people are actually really high on him when I've done a few of these predictions and whatnot with some of these schedules. A lot of people said that they have completely and totally bought into Deshaun Foster.
He might be a great coach. I just don't think he's going to do it year 1.
Yeah, he's been a head coach. Let's see, coaching career. Okay, so he has actually not ever been a head coach before. This will be his first job. He was at UCLA last year. He was their running backs coach. He's been with them since 2017, which is about the same time that Chip Kelly came aboard. Chip Kelly came on in 2018. He's actually still there from the Jim Mora era with UCLA. So, yeah. So, I mean, there's continuity there. He knows what to expect with them. But I'm going to be honest with you, too. Even though running back is just one position of UCLA, I haven't really seen UCLA do a whole lot of standout things in the last few seasons. So I don't expect this to be a very close game either, by no means.
No, UCLA, while they've been successful ish in football, their real successes come from basketball. So I mean, honestly, I don't ever have a huge expectation from UCLA. And you know what? Like I said, Deshaun Foster may be a phenomenal coach by the end of his into 3 years from now, but it's not gonna, having never been a head coach doesn't mean you don't know how to coach, but that's a different set of reins you've got to hold on to when you're the guy over being one of the guys that's teaching. You're the guy making all the decisions.
Yeah, you have to answer for every part
Everything.
of your team, whether good or bad. You have to answer for.
You don't get plausible deniability as a head coach.
No. Now, one game, the next 3 games that Penn State have, I feel could at least two of them could potentially be trap games because they're both on the road. Excuse me. They have to go to USC. Now, again, I expect USC to take a step back only because they have lost Caleb Williams. They lost a lot of talent as far as the draft goes. Now, Lincoln Riley is still there. He obviously is a quarterback whisperer and a quarterback guru. So I don't expect USC to be awful, but I do expect them to probably have about a 6-6 season this year. I think Penn State still goes in and gets the win, but I could see this being a potential trap game for them.
I as well. You and I talked a little bit about this before. This is the one of 2 games, and it's the next 2 that could be losses. I could see Penn State winning them both. I don't see them losing both of them though.
Yeah,
I think that at worst they go 1-2 out of these next 3 games. I think they could easily go 2-1. I'm not going to say they're going to go 3-0.
Yeah. Because then honestly, to me, the more tougher the test as far as going on the road is they have to go to Wisconsin to Camp Randall. And as we know, a lot of people struggle when they have to go up into Madison, Wisconsin to face the Badgers. So
because let's be honest, USC is in LA. So it takes
conditions.
And it takes a lot more to sell that up.
Yeah. And now they do get a little bit of luck in the fact that they host Ohio State. So now last year when they met a lot of the criticism and they failed to meet expectations, they were in Columbus, which is already a hard place to play at, especially when you have the Buckeyes as high as they go. The only thing to me, and I think you and I have talked about this and we both kind of agree, the only thing that may potentially hold the Buckeyes back is quarterback play. Because honestly, most Buckeye fans, I think, agree they're in the same boat now as they were last year with Devin Brown and Will Howard this year, as they were with Devin Brown and Kyle McCord last year. Neither one is really making any major standout moves to say, wow, this looks like our guy that's going to lead us into the playoffs. Now, I even heard a potential theory or rumor that somebody had brought up. I think it was Joel Klatt, if I remember right, that we may even see Aaron Noland by this point, depending on if Will Howard isn't doing well, if Devin Brown isn't doing well. Why not give the freshman a chance and let him start, get some actual meaningful reps? And who knows, maybe by then, because of how talented the rest of your Ohio State team is, they can carry him, kind of pick him up a little bit. Now, he does get the benefit of he has not only Ryan Day, but he has Chip Kelly coaching him. So you may have a little bit of an advantage with that, but that's the only one where I see maybe the Ohio State trips up, but I still have Ohio State winning, and at minimum, if Penn State is going to lose any game, I for sure have them losing to Ohio State.
Yeah, that's the only one on this schedule, because the next 4, I don't even think we need to talk about the next 4. They're going to win those games. Yeah, Penn State's going 4-0 in those next 4 games.
Yeah, because
honestly, Tony, they could be setting themselves up to play in the Big Ten championship game if they only lose to Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be close. I still think the Big Ten championship is going to come down to Ohio State versus Oregon.
Me too. They could backdoor and sneak back in the back door of it.
I think so, especially if Ohio State trips at any point, because Ohio State has a much tougher schedule than they do, because they have to face Oregon and they have to face Michigan, no matter how good or bad Michigan is going to be.
Penn State.
And Penn State. So they may get tripped up a little bit more. than some of the other ones. So
Mhm.
we've got
I still foresee Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten championship. I really do.
I do too. So who would be your second team?
All right. So these might sound familiar.
Okay.
But I've got Nebraska as the next one.
Let's
The
go.
next of my
Go Big Red.
Excuse me.
Go Big Red.
Yeah, go Big Red. This now I will the second game of this season for them could be a trap game for them because I really do like what Colorado's done. I do like Deion Sanders. I like what he's done in the portal. I do like the fact of what they've got in positions. Do I think they're going to be a playoff team even? No, not necessarily, but I think they can beat some teams that might surprise you. I really do.
Now, I think Nebraska's benefit, at least this year as compared to last year, they got Colorado early on last year too, but it was in Colorado.
Right.
This time they get it in Lincoln, so they'll have a little bit of the home field advantage. And Matt Rule brought something up that was really interesting in one of his most recent interviews was he didn't know how to play in the Big Ten last year because it was his first year. You know, obviously he went to Temple, he was at Baylor. I think he was at
Carolina.
Rice. Yeah, he went to the Panthers, and then he went to become the head coach of Nebraska. So he's been used to a lot of warm weather places for the most part. But now that he's got a year under his feet, he's supposed to be one of the top quarterback prospects in Dylan Raiola at quarterback now. It should be a very elevated Nebraska team. And yeah, I feel if there is a trap game on here, I feel it could be Colorado. I think we both agree, really the only for sure loss we see is Ohio State. Now, I even got the argument presented to me that the last 3 games could be trap games for them because they have to go to LA to USC. Again, I do think USC takes a step back, although who knows what this USC team could look like. Not saying they're going to make a deep run by no means, but I think it could spell a little bit of trouble for them. Now, again, they do get the benefit of they host Wisconsin. But again, Wisconsin is not exactly a slouch. I think Luke Fickell is trying to figure out his identity with Wisconsin still. I think there's still a lot of upside and potential. And of course, this is probably one of the more underrated Big Ten West rivalries with Nebraska and Wisconsin, because usually it's pretty close. And then, of course, their very last game going against Iowa in Iowa City. And even for all the jokes that I know you and I have made and pretty much everybody makes about Iowa, the fact that they basically play without an offense, if their offense is even remotely mediocre, like even slightly below average, this could still be a very scary Iowa Hawkeyes team for them to face.
I agree. Those last 3 games could be. They're going to lose to Ohio State. For one thing, it's at Ohio Stadium, and that's a trip to Columbus is very difficult. And for a team that's going to have a true freshman as their quarterback, it's really going to be a difficulty for them. Now, if the black shirt defense can be there to put a stop to potentially the Buckeye offense, it could be a low-scoring game, but I don't see them having enough firepower to beat Ohio State.
Right.
So that's their one. I know they're gonna. I'm 97% positive they're gonna lose that game.
Yeah, but I mean, nonetheless, though, for Nebraska, and not to cut you off and to let you finish your thought real quick, for them to come into after their second bye week of the season to basically what I think they're going to come into at 8-1. That's a really damn good season.
Even if they lost those 3, they'd finish 8-4, and that's a really good comeback season.
Yes,
from that.
100%.
Now, the one thing that I think could bite them going and playing, and it's at home, but playing Wisconsin a week after they just went to the West Coast, coming back. Now, it's a little different. It's very much different when it comes to, excuse me, football. Travel is completely different. But I believe does that say it could be 11 o'clock at night when they play
for Wisconsin?
The USC game.
Oh yeah, for USC. Now, a little bit of the benefit is that Nebraska is only 2 hours behind
Right.
LA time. So it's not as bad as if they were on the East Coast.
It still sucks.
Still rough, but not as bad.
But it could throw that game against Wisconsin the next week could be that trap game. I don't think necessarily going to USC is the trap. I think the next week coming back and playing against Wisconsin, who's going to be at least very, very competitive, I think.
Yeah.
Whether they have a successful Wisconsin season that we're used to, I don't know that that's going to happen, but they're still going to be a pain in the butt for a lot of teams. And for a team that just went to the West Coast and played at USC and having to come back, they might trip Nebraska up. And you're right. Excuse me. That last game at Kinnick Stadium, that's going to be one interesting game right there, because again, you've got the Nebraska does not play Michigan. They don't play Penn State. They don't play Oregon. If they can win all or flat out and go 11-1, they could be playing Ohio State in the Big Ten title game. I mean, it just depends. Or they could be playing Oregon. Whoever wins that Oregon Ohio State game, it could be an extremely interesting last week of the season, depending on how things go and how teams perform in these games that we're seeing right here near the end of the season.
Yeah. Now I do, real quick before we get to your last one, I do want to look at Wisconsin's schedule, because surprisingly enough, I have not looked at their schedule this year so far. So they
Penn
face
State, Oregon, and Nebraska right there, and Iowa. Wow, that's 4 games in 5 weeks.
Oh, and they face Alabama to start the season too.
Yeah, that's going to be an easy one.
Right. I mean, at least it's in Wisconsin. I mean,
oh yeah, that's still doesn't help.
No.
Tony left. So I guess yeah, that's a difficult schedule for them.
When your mouth is so good, it can actually kick you out because you hit the button.
I just kept talking.
I appreciate that.
But that schedule for Wisconsin, it's brutal. That is a brutal schedule, especially like I said, that 4 weeks right there in that 4 games in that 5 week span, from the last week of October through right before Thanksgiving. That is horrible.
Yes.
That could be a 1-3, at best 2-2, I think.
Yeah.
That's rough. That is a rough schedule for them.
So obviously we think Wisconsin's probably going to go in the playoffs. Just who would be your third team though?
Well, the last one, and again, it's going to be a familiar one. I think Iowa could be that third team that could actually sneak in. Their schedule, lends to a very good record. If they can win their games, they have to play Ohio State, but they don't have a Michigan. They don't have an Oregon. They don't play USC even. Like they miss some of those trap games. Now they play Wisconsin, but it's at home. They play Nebraska, but it's at home. Now they've got to go to Michigan State, and I think there are a lot of people that are sleeping on the Spartans. I'm not going to say they're going to be 8-4, but I think they could be 6-6, 7-5, and they're going to beat somebody. They're going to have some games to where they're going to be in it, and they're going to be, if we remember right, they played Iowa very well last year, and they were a dumpster fire last year.
Yep.
And now they've got I can't even remember the coach's name, but the guy from Oregon State coming in and coaching.
Jonathan Smith.
Yes, thank you. And I think they're set to be a heck of a lot better than what they were last year. So that, I'm not saying that they will beat Iowa, but the way they can play a team like Iowa, even when they're having a horrible season, and they get to host them, so that could be. And this whole team is all contingent on whether or not their offense can produce.
Yeah,
I think they're going to win games because of their defense in general, but you can't beat Ohio. I don't think you're beating Ohio State even with a good offense, but you can't beat a Wisconsin. I honestly don't know that you can beat a UCLA if you don't have a good enough offense to produce some points, and you're definitely not beating Nebraska.
No. And honestly, too, they have kind of another tough test, even though, again, it'll be a step back for this team, but they have to go to College Park kind of at the end of the season with a Maryland team that may honestly have nothing to lose at that point. Like, we're going to play what we've got, and if we win, cool. If not, is what it is type deal. So it'll be interesting nonetheless. I do think it's funny though that we know each other so well. We're starting to it's these three, like they could make a little bit of noise this year.
And the only one that may make it is Penn State, or none of them do. I don't know.
None of the above. That'd be our luck.
Just depends. It just depends how they come through and develop. They've definitely got the cards in place. It's whether or not they play them at the right time.
Rutgers, Minnesota, Northwestern. That means it's your year. IU. Fortunately, it's not your year yet.
Boiler up, baby.
Maybe. But Sam, buddy, appreciate you joining me as always. Love having you on the show. If you guys like listening to Sam, if you want to know more about the Big Ten Conference itself and Big Ten sports, especially both about football, both men's and women's college basketball in the Big Ten, please make sure you check out Sam Springer and make sure you check him out at Big Talk. That's B1G Talk on Facebook, Instagram, TikToks, everything like that. You can find him there.
And right now we're doing the men's basketball season because we've kind of gotten to the point where we've evaluated everything football-wise. Until we get closer to kickoff, we're going through the basketball season and kind of getting in place. Because by the time football gets done, basketball started. So we're getting that preview done now. And Dalton right now currently is probably in day 3 of constant college football.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, again, he and I are in the same boat. It's been 11 years, man. It's been a long time.
That's right.
But appreciate everybody tuning in. Please like, share, follow, subscribe if you like this. You can follow. You can find me at Inside the Hoosier Mind on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can also find me through MBR Talk, the Military Broadcast Radio page. You can find me there as well, amongst another host of great shows as far as therapy, as far as helping just people have conversations, maybe even share stories about PTSD, times about being in the military, politics. They have literally anything and everything. They're even starting a brand new MBR gaming channel where they're going to be streaming stuff. May have to see if you guys will actually get to watch me get my ass kicked on online play with NCAA, because if I'm terrible at anything, it's Madden online and probably on NCAA online. But I haven't played that because I know I'm going to get my ass kicked. I'm at 0-0. I can't lose if I don't play the game.
You'll be undefeated at least.
Exactly. I won't win a game, but I won't lose a game either.
That's right.
But again, appreciate everybody joining. Thank you again to Sam for joining us. And I will actually not be here next week. I have to travel on work, but I will be back the following week after that. And we will be one step closer to football.
I am going to be at the Big Ten Media Days. So if you want some information on Big Ten football, go find Big Talk on any of the social medias, and we will be posting some stuff from the Big Ten Football Media Days in Indianapolis.
Exactly. But until then, we will catch y'all later. Everybody have a good night.
Bye, guys.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to take a moment to talk about something close to my heart. Military Broadcast Radio is doing incredible work to support our veterans and bring their voices to the world. They rely on your generous donations and your dedicated volunteer hours to make it happen. I encourage you to consider supporting MBR in any way, form that you can. Use this QR code that's attached to the picture, or you can go to our website at mbradio.us. That's MikeBravoRadio.us to learn more about how you can donate or volunteer even just an hour a week from your home. Help make a difference in the lives of our veterans, because once again, we're all here for you and not for us. We're giving a veterans